The cocoa powder in your kitchen isn't just disappointing, it's been engineered to taste like nothing. That tub you bought, stripped, overprocessed, turned into dry, bitter dust that barely resembles chocolate, and the companies selling it know exactly what they're doing. In the next few minutes, I'll expose 7 brands to avoid, what they've done to your cocoa, and the 2 that still sell the real thing. After this, you won't look at cocoa powder the same way again. 7. Nestle Toll House Baking Cocoa. The yellow container next to the chocolate chips feels familiar. You trust it because you trust the cookies. Nestle built that trust over decades. And that trust quietly extends to their cocoa powder. But open the container and actually smell it. The aroma is faint, almost neutral. Now place a small pinch on your tongue. The bitterness hits quickly, sharp and dry, and then it disappears without leaving behind anything recognizable as chocolate. That flatness isn't accidental. Cacao beans begin at roughly 50% fat. That fat cocoa butter carries aroma, texture, and depth. Nestlé presses the majority of it out, often down to around 10 to 12% fat. The removed cocoa butter is sold elsewhere because it's more profitable in cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and premium chocolate manufacturing. What remains is dry powder that no longer behaves like full chocolate. Then it undergoes alkalization, a chemical process that reduces acidity and standardizes how it performs in baking. The result is predictable in recipes but stripped of nuance. This cocoa is engineered for consistency, not for flavor. You're not tasting chocolate. You're tasting what's left after the valuable parts were extracted. If you thought paying more would fix that, let's move up a shelf. 6. Ghirardelli Premium Cocoa Powder. Ghirardelli positions itself as a step above. The packaging is refined, the heritage story is stronger, the price is higher. It feels like an upgrade, but examine the fundamentals and you'll find the same structural process underneath the branding. The fat content still hovers around the same low percentage as Nestle. The powder is milled extremely fine for uniform mixing. The alkalization process ensures consistent color and predictable baking behavior. Taste it dry, and you may notice it feels slightly smoother than Nestle, but the core experience is unchanged. It's still heavily pressed, still standardized, still engineered for mass production. The premium label does not mean the cocoa butter was preserved. It does not mean the roasting was gentler. It simply means the narrative is more polished. You are paying more for presentation, not for materially more cacao. The process remains industrial, and when marketing language starts leaning into darkness and intensity, things become even more processed. 5. Hershey's Special Dark Cocoa. The darker color suggests depth. The word special implies improvement, but that deeper brown tone is largely the result of heavier Dutch processing. Alkalization darkens cocoa. It also neutralizes acidity and flattens flavor variation. When you taste Special Dark beside a natural cocoa, you'll notice it feels smoother at first. The sharp edge is reduced, but something else is reduced as well: personality. The complexity is muted. The finish is shorter. The cocoa tastes controlled, corrected, standardized. Darker does not mean richer in cacao. It often means more heavily processed to achieve a consistent color and predictable baking chemistry. This product performs reliably in commercial cake mixes and boxed brownies. That reliability comes at the cost of individuality. The intensity suggested by the label is visual, not sensory. And if you grew up with the original version, Verdien, this next one shaped your understanding of what cocoa even is. 4. Hershey's Natural Unsweetened Cocoa. The brown can is iconic. It's likely been in your family pantry for decades. Hershey's didn't just sell cocoa powder, it defined the American baseline for what cocoa is supposed to taste like. Open it and smell carefully. The aroma is faint and slightly dusty. Taste a pinch and the bitterness feels aggressive, drying, and abrupt. Like the others, this cocoa is pressed down to roughly 10 to 12% fat. Nearly half of what made the bean luxurious has been removed. That missing fat carried volatile aromatics and texture. Without it, the powder relies on sugar, butter, and flour to become palatable. Hershey's cocoa isn't dangerous. It simply isn't whole chocolate anymore. It functions as a baking input, not as a standalone food. Generations accepted this as normal because it was ubiquitous. But once you taste minimally processed cacao, you realize this profile is the result of profit optimization, not flavor preservation. Now let's shift categories because the next products remove even more cacao from the equation. 3. Swiss Miss Hot Cocoa Mix. Swiss Miss represents comfort for many people. Tear open a packet, add hot water, stir, and you have instant hot chocolate. But turn the packet over and read the ingredient list. Sugar appears first. Corn syrup solids follow. Dairy powders come next. Cocoa is several ingredients down the list. In a standard packet, only a small fraction is actual cocoa powder. The majority is sweetness and filler designed to dissolve instantly and create the illusion of richness. When you pour hot water over it, the powder disappears immediately because sugar dissolves effortlessly. Real cacao resists. It clumps and requires whisking because it still contains fat. The dominant flavor in Swiss Miss is sweetness. The chocolate note is faint and fleeting. It tastes pleasant because it is sugar-forward, not because it is chocolate-rich. And if you think switching brands improves that formula, look closely at the next one. 2. Nestle Rich Chocolate Hot Cocoa Mix. Nestlé's version carries the word rich prominently on the box. It suggests depth and indulgence, but there is no regulated definition for rich in this context. The ingredient list mirrors the same structure: sugar first, stabilizers and dairy components next, minimal cocoa further down. Brew it beside Swiss Miss and the differences are subtle at best. Slight variations in sweetness or creaminess do not change the fundamental formula. The cocoa remains a supporting flavor in a sugar delivery system. The brand name may be different, but the strategy is identical: minimize cocoa to control costs and maximize instant dissolvability. At this point, you might assume store brands compromise further. In reality, they expose the entire category. 1. Store brands. Great Value and Kroger. Purchase a store brand hot cocoa mix and prepare it next to the name brand versions. The sweetness profile is nearly indistinguishable. The cocoa intensity remains low. The texture is the same. When a $3 box tastes almost identical to a $5 box, it reveals something important. The formula across the category is fundamentally uniform. The economics are simple. Cocoa is one of the more expensive ingredients in the mix. Sugar is cheap. By keeping cocoa levels minimal and standardizing the blend, manufacturers ensure consistency and cost efficiency. The store brands don't undercut quality. They reveal that the branded versions were never cacao forward to begin with. At this point, most supermarket cacao products have been defatted, alkalized, diluted, or minimized, but two brands still approach cacao differently. Safe pick one: Taza Chocolate Stone. Ground cacao Taza processes. Cacao using stone grinding methods that retain more of the natural fat content, often between 15 and 20%. When you open a bag, the aroma is immediate and pronounced. It smells like chocolate rather than neutral powder. The texture is slightly coarse, which reflects a slower grinding process that generates less heat and preserves flavor compounds. Taste it on its own and you'll notice bitterness, but also layers subtle fruit notes, warmth, and a lingering finish. When whisked into warm milk, it creates body and richness that industrial cocoa lacks. It doesn't dissolve instantly, and that resistance signals retained fat and integrity. This is cacao that still behaves like chocolate because much of the chocolate remains intact. If you want an even more refined drinking experience, there is one step further. Safe. Pick 2. Dandelion Chocolate. Drinking chocolate dandelion approaches cacao from a bean-to-bar philosophy, often sourcing single-origin beans and roasting them gently to preserve regional characteristics. The fat content is higher than standard grocery store cocoa, frequently exceeding 20%. That retained cocoa butter transforms the drinking experience. Open the pouch and the fragrance is unmistakable, bright, expressive, and unmistakably chocolate. When prepared with hot milk and whisked properly, the drink develops in stages. It begins with structured bitterness, then opens into nuanced notes that can include fruit, floral tones, or subtle earthiness depending on origin. The finish lingers, coating the palate rather than evaporating quickly. This isn't engineered powder designed for baking chemistry. It is chocolate meant to be tasted slowly. The higher price reflects the fact that nothing valuable was stripped out and sold separately. Most grocery store cacao products are optimized for margin and consistency. Fat is removed because it is profitable elsewhere. Alkalization standardizes performance but flattens character. In hot cocoa mixes, cocoa becomes a minor ingredient behind sugar. The two safer options retain more fat, preserve origin character, and allow cacao to taste like chocolate rather than baking input. Yes, they cost more, but that cost reflects what remains in the product rather than what was extracted from it. Check your pantry tonight. If your cacao cannot stand on its own in warm milk with minimal sweetener, it isn't whole chocolate. It's industrial powder. This is Avoid Eats. Stay sharp. Taste deliberately.